Hello once again to my studio. Today I'm going to show you what got me started last summer painting watercolor on canvas. Some friends of mine and I were visiting a little town in Normandy by the name of Argenton. Kathy, Bobby, and I decided we would snoop around the little town and see what we could find for art supplies. They did not have many, but we found a place that was very similar to our Dollar General or Dollar Tree stores. It was one of those shops that just carried anything and everything. And so we checked it out because we thought surely there would be some supplies for children, crayons, maybe some markers and some paints, basic paint sets. And we came across these little canvases they were a couple of them in the package. They were very affordable. And we had lots of media with us. We had small quantities of watercolors and pencils and markers and things. So we thought, well, we'll give these little canvases a try. They're gallery wrapped, if you will. They're stapled on the back. This one I think is 4 inches square, and it comes with its own little easel. So I will drop in a couple of examples of some of these that we did together, and we gave them to all of our friends as well. We painted up a storm, probably maybe 20 or more of these little canvases in just an afternoon. Well, this is my tool for today. This is something new, but I wanted to jump right in and show you the new tool that I will be demonstrating in my demo today. Now, my demo shows you that it's possible to go right in without putting any more gesso on it, just using the gesso that has been put on this very cheap canvas, and go right in and paint watercolor without adding anything else. It's possible. It's something that I haven't seen done before. I'm sure there are people out there who have tried this, but I've been quite delighted. And I was asked recently to do a demo in our local watercolor art society. So coming up, I will be actually teaching how to paint on canvas. But for now, you get to see me demonstrate this, and I hope you'll give it a try. So I always get started by wetting my paints. I am going in with some pretty saturated color, so I let them sit a minute and reconstitute. I'm painting a floral painting sort of off the top of my head. I'm not really using any reference, but I paint a lot of flowers. I do plein air painting, and I spend a lot of time observing in my own garden, sketching. So I just thought I would have some fun and have a play with my watercolors. I'm going right in on the prepared canvas. This canvas has probably 1 or possibly 2 coats of white gesso on it. When I unwrap the plastic off of a canvas like this, I'm careful not to handle it very much because the oil in my hands, the oils in my fingers, can actually cause a situation where the watercolor resists the oils. So I'm careful whether I'm handling canvas or paper or whatever, because an oily surface just does not work with watercolors. So I'm using just a cheap Chinese calligraphy brush. I find it's really a pretty cool brush to use for this type of thing. It's ridiculous how affordable it is, but that's really not why I'm using it. I have very expensive brushes, but it has just a really nice sort of sharp tip to it, and it holds plenty of paint, especially in the quantities, small quantities that I'm working with here. It goes right into my palette and lifts quite a lot of color. I don't like to work with a lot of water, especially when I'm working on canvas. So it's as though it digs right into the palette and gathers up just the right amount of saturated paint. So this is sort of a fantasy rose painting. I'm not working really hard to depict roses. I just wanted the impression of some flowers. My palette is pretty limited. I'm using a couple of reds. Let's see, I'm using quinacridone magenta, quinacridone coral, just a little bit of quinacridone red. So those three reds, and I'm using three greens. Sap green, dark sap green, and green gold. Those are really some favorites of mine. I keep my palette usually loaded up with those because I use them and have to add more on a regular basis. But for me, those are all three Daniel Smith paints. And yeah, so I have down here, I have what looks like a brown, and that brown is mixed with the green and the coral. So sap green and coral makes a nice mix of a neutral. I'm doing some negative painting around some of the leaf shapes. Now, with this painting, you know, I could have left a lot of white in the background. I kind of like that, and I'll probably do that on another little painting because I like the white. Even though if you went into a flower garden, you wouldn't really see white exactly. But in this case, once I got some flower shapes, if you will, in place, I went around with this mix of green and the reds, and so I made a neutral. And once I get these flower shapes in place, I'm going in with a very watered down neutral the whole way around the painting. There are a few sparkles in the end of the white of the canvas, but I thought it would be fun to paint in the negative shapes. This entire little 4-inch square painting took me about 20-25 minutes, and I don't say that because I'm bragging what a fast painter I am. It's just that these little pieces are so much fun, and they don't take long, so they're great practice, and they also make a great gift. I've given a lot of these away, and I've sold some. So yeah, the nice thing about these little paintings with an easel, you can give it or sell it, and someone can display it very easily. Now, last week I mentioned using Dorland's wax, and at the end of this video I'm going to show you Dorland's wax once again, because after I let this painting sit for a day or two so that I'm certain I don't want to make any changes to it, I will be sealing this with Dorland's wax, and that will make it so that it will never absorb dirt or moisture, because it will be sealed with the wax. And that way, you know, if it ever gets dusty or something gets splashed on it, it will easily be washed off with a damp cloth, and that will never lift the paint. The paint will be sealed down under that wax. So yes, this is a watercolor that does not need glazing. It doesn't need plexiglass or glass. In this case, I have not used any kind of watercolor ground or gesso created for watercolor. This is just over-the-counter pre-stretched canvas, and this is the case whether I work tiny like this or large. I'm using a cloth. I had painted some of that neutral color, and I'm lifting a little bit of the color off so that it isn't a dark value. In doing that, I have painted a little bit darker value, and then I'm lifting with the cloth. I'm painting around the edges. This is, even though it's tiny, it's still a gallery wrapped canvas, which means that it's stapled in the back and the canvas goes all around the edges. So I like the looks of a canvas where the edges are painted. On a large canvas, it's quite presentable to hang a large painting on a wall that's gallery wrapped, and you don't really have to have a frame on it. It's optional. But when I paint on gallery wrapped canvases, I don't feel like I have to provide a frame. If the client who buys the painting wants a frame, that's up to them. It's easy to frame. So I took the extra time to paint the negative spaces rather than leaving the canvas white, as I said earlier. So I'm putting the neutral color down, and then I'm lifting it with the paper towel. I'm going very pale up here at the top of the painting, a little bit darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. Taking care of the edges. Again, I really like this cheap little brush. I use it all the time, even when I go out and plein air and paint. It just, it's a brush that, for me, it handles well and holds just the right amount of water, and it holds its point. I've painted with a couple of calligraphy brushes for so many years, and I've never replaced them. They haven't lost their point. They just keep on keeping on. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm looking around this little composition, and this is such good practice. I decided I wanted some darker darks. I want a little more saturation in some areas to lead the eye around. Add a few more elements here. I'm taking my time, trying to make decisions. Adding a little bit more of my sap greens. More elements of stems and leaves, and now I'm going to go in and add some pops of bright color. The previous paint has dried on the canvas. It dries a little bit more slowly than it does on paper because the gessoed surface holds the paint on the surface rather than allowing it to be absorbed very much. So it takes a little bit longer to dry, and just like working on paper, watercolor gets lighter on canvas as it dries. So I'm just going in with some pops of color. Which I think really makes a big difference. Of course, I love color. I love bright color. And I did make the decision earlier to add the neutral background. Even though it's a light background, it's a brown background, or very pale brown. But that then sort of demands of me to add some saturated color and some darks. Perhaps if I had left the background white, it wouldn't have been as important. But anyway, everything that we do affects everything else. So I made that decision of putting that background in, so I popped some more color in. I'm pushing it a little bit more, tweaking. You know, there's never a clear stopping point, but I do try to stop before I start correcting things. I want this to be an impression of a rose garden, if you will. So I'm just tweaking. I think one of the most difficult things, especially for a watercolor artist, is to know when to stop. Now, interestingly, it is possible to lift color off of this canvas. It's easier to lift color than off of paper. So that's one of the things I really like about working on canvas. And in future weeks, you will see me working on canvas, and I'll demonstrate some lifting. I haven't done that here, but I will be doing that sooner or later because it's possible, and it's a great way to make corrections or adjustments as you're editing. So tomorrow I'll take a look at this painting and decide if I want to do anything further with it. When I've painted a painting, I lose the ability to be objective about it. So I like to wait a day or two to see if I want to make any changes, because certainly when I put the wax on, I won't be able to make changes. So here it is on its little easel, and I'm pretty happy with it. Well, thank you for joining me, and this has been a fun little experiment. I feel like I'm still experimenting with this because I've only done it a few times, but if I decide this is finished tomorrow, I will be using Dorland's wax, and I've shown this on a previous video, how to use it, and I'll be using it again in future videos because it's a wonderful way to not have to put my paintings under plexiglass, which gets scratched, and it is reflective, so I really like to use just the canvas. So tune in again. I'm happy that you joined me, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell if you want to be reminded of my future videos. So until next week, thanks for watching.